Hey everybody, it's Cash, and today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Enemy of God by Bernard Cornwell. That's book 2 in the Warlord Chronicles. The first half of this video will be a non-spoiler review, and then I will follow it up with a spoiler discussion at the end. So let's just get right on into it. We'll start with the plot, and before I get too far into it, I have to start by saying I went into this book with super high expectations, and I think I kind of shot myself in the foot because of that. And what I mean is, every review I watched or read, it kind of had nothing but praise for this book, and I actually think I like the Winter King a little bit more. But I'll start with the things I did like regarding the plot. First off, Bernard Cornwell is a fantastic writer. I had really nothing wrong. I have nothing bad to say about his prose overall, other than he can be just a bit overly descriptive at times. Um, there are some really fantastic moments in this book. Moments I know I'm going to remember for a very long time. Specifically, there are two separate, really tragic incidents in this book um, that just kind of stuck with me. Cornwell is really great in those kind of emotional moments. He really kind of makes you feel right along with the characters here. Um, this book is a little bit shorter than the first book. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he was able to pack a lot of story into the second book, so that is a good thing as well. And of course, this is still a frame narrative where the main character is kind of telling us the story, but that kind of took more of a back seat in this one compared to the Winter King. So I actually enjoyed that a bit more too, because it kind of we were more in the meat of the story the whole time instead of kind of hearing about what's happening in the present day. Now I'm going to get into some of the things I did not like about the plot, and I gotta say, at times, well, let me start by saying, in The Winter King, I always felt like the story was progressing forward, and it never kind of felt like things were taking a backward step. But there are a few times in Enemy of God where I felt like we would spend a lot of pages, several pages, kind of trying to accomplish something, and then, suddenly it would just become all irrelevant and just kind of pointless. And, I'm fine if there's a feeling of like, oh, damn, that was all for nothing, but I guess it just kind of didn't hit me like it was supposed to in Enemy of God. Um, there were certain points in this book that I actually had to take breaks, reading breaks from reading it because of how aggravated I was. Um, I'm fine when bad things are happening to the characters, but what kind of bothered me is it just kind of seemed like there were times where the characters were blatantly overlooking certain things or kind of making just steps that I felt didn't really go with their character just to kind of progress the plot and for bad things to happen. Um, at least that's kind of my opinion on this. Right, and I'll just kind of roll into characters off of that, and all of these characters are deeply flawed, and I do understand that there is a certain beauty to that. But like I said, it did get a little bit annoying when I felt like the flaws were kind of a little bit pick and choosy at times just to progress that plot. I understand that does make for a good story. I just felt like it kind of took a little bit away from the characters, and a little bit took away from some of the things I enjoyed more in The Winter King. Dervell, still a great main character. He's still a very realistic character as far as I'm concerned. Almost everything I said about him in the Winter King review still mostly holds true. Um, there are a few times where he's about to do something, and as a reader, you're like, "Oh hell yeah, Dervell! Go be a badass." And then kind of someone stops him from doing it, and you're like, "Oh damn it!" Um, but even he suffers from the same thing I said earlier about kind of making these blatant errors just to kind of progress the plot and for bad things to happen. Um, at least the great downfalls in this book didn't seem as believable as it did in the first one. Um, Overall, I will say there was less development in this book for the characters than there were in the first one. We do see Derville at least become a family man, so that is pretty cool. But I'll say even in the Winter King, we knew he was kind of a softie. All right, but now we can get to the guy who kind of really pissed me off in this story. Good old Arthur, the character this whole story is kind of revolving around. I almost hated this dude at times, I can't lie. I'm supposed to revere this man, and I can't lie. Some of the things he does in this book just makes him look like a giant doofus. In the first book, Arthur felt larger than life and popped off the page consistently. But in this one, he just keeps making these simple mistakes time after time every time we see him. And I won't. His hatred and obsession with oaths just drove me crazy in this story. This man is obsessed with keeping his oaths and respecting kings, except for when he's not and thinking it's little Arthur, but I digress. Literally in the first book, this guy, slaps a major oath in the face to do what he felt was right, but in this one, it's all oaths all the time, no matter what anybody says to him. Um, and then it takes the entire book, the entire story, pretty much, for him to snap out of this. It takes a major blow to him personally for him to kind of snap out of this personality and realize kind of what he has to get done. We do get a lot more Merlin in this book compared to the first one, which is really cool. Um, he does take a little bit of a backseat in the second half, but the time we do get with him, it's really enjoyable. He is not as much of a Deus Ex Machina character as he was in the first book, which I really do enjoy. Um, there's not a character in this book that doesn't kind of get the wind knocked out of them at one point, and Merlin is not exempt, so that's pretty cool there. Um, Cornwell does a good job of making us kind of feel bad for all of these characters, except maybe Arthur. But for Merlin, he did a really great job of making me feel bad for him when I was supposed to, and then making me pump my fists in the air when he did something cool. So that was pretty awesome there. Lancelot in this is still a total punk ass. Nothing's really changed there. Ironically, he actually didn't make me hate him more in this book compared to the first one. And I know what you're thinking. How is that possible? Well, I'll explain kind of more in the spoiler section, but really it was because kind of the events in this book and the things involving Lancelot kind of just made me hate other characters more and not so much hate Lancelot more, but whatever. And then this is probably just a me thing, but there was a lot less Sagramore and Galahad in this book, and that kind of just hurts me because they were my two favorite characters from the first book, and it's mostly because they're just doing things away from Dervell in this, so we just don't really, see them much. All right, now I'll talk about the ladies in the story a little bit. Morgan gets done completely dirty in this book, I thought. She was kind of whatever in the first one, but she was just really not enjoyable at all in the second one here. Um, Nimue is still a very strong character, way stronger than Morgan, in my opinion. The real dynamic her and Derville have is really well done. It's one of the better parts, one of the more interesting things in the story so far, in my opinion. Um, between Nimue and Merlin is where we get a lot of the magic moments in these first two books. And again, it's still one of those things where we're really not sure if the magic's real or not, but hey, it's really well done. And Kywin is a cool character, and I really appreciate the relationship her and Dervell have. Um, another one of my favorite moments in this story is kind of just the slice of life that we get between the two of them, where they're just kind of chilling and enjoying their days and enjoying each other's company. Really, it's those moments where we can kind of see how great of a writer Cornwell is. The setting and world building in this one I thought was handled just as well as it was in The Winter King. Cornwell is very descriptive in his writing, and we really get a good sense of what the land looks like here. Every new area Derville travels to is very much described in every detail. In my review for the first book, I said when we could really tell when Derville is in his homeland compared to when he is traveling out of the country, and you can really get that same feeling here. Every time he's traveling out of his homeland, there's kind of a feeling of wonder and awe when he's looking at these places he's never seen before. And specifically in the first part of the book, I can't pronounce the name of it, where him, Merlin, Nimue, and Kywin, they're going off to search for something, and that whole area was really well done, and it's actually probably my favorite part of the book, is kind of right at the beginning there. Um, there are other moments in this book where Derville is kind of just looking off in the horizon, and it's really just explaining the beauty of the land, and it really kind of gets a sense and shows us how much pride that Derville has in the home that he's been fighting for most of his life for. The pacing is solid in this book. I did say there were a few times I kind of had to take a break and walk away, and that's definitely true. This one did take me longer to finish overall than it did the first book. But again, that's kind of a me thing, I think, and it wasn't so much the book's fault. And I don't know if this should go here or in the plot section, so I'll say it again. There were a few times where I thought the story was kind of progressing a little bit backwards in one way. Like I said, we'd spend a lot of time kind of worrying about something and then it would just stop mattering, and another time where a lot of time would jump all at once and then we would go backwards and kind of hear about certain events that kind of led up to it. And to be fair, that did also happen in The Winter King, but I think it was just kind of handled better in that one, in my opinion. Will I keep going with the series? Yes, I'm going to keep going with the series, but After reading The Enemy of God, I definitely do need a break from the Warlord Chronicles, so I'm still going to finish it, still going to read it this year, but I am going to take a little bit of a break and not read it as early on as I thought I would. Um, this is still, this was one of the series I said I was going to start and finish this year, and I still am keeping that promise. But like I said, probably going to take a month or so off, just to kind of let it breathe, so that way I'm not just kind of crossing my arms and hate reading the third book, because that wouldn't be fair for anybody. After that up and down review, I'm landing on a 3 out of 5 for Enemy of God by Bernard Cornwell. I can already hear the pitchforks because, like I said, everybody seems to love this book. But hey, I can't lie, I'm sorry. It's just a me thing. Maybe I just kind of read it at the wrong time. I don't know. Maybe I just had the wrong expectations or attitude going into it. But I'm landing on a 3 out of 5. Alright, so that's the review, and now we're going to move on over to the spoiler discussion. So that's your warning there. The rest of this video will contain heavy spoilers for Enemy of God. So we're going to hop right into it. Part 1 is called The Dark Road, and this part is actually really enjoyable in my opinion, and it kind of kept a lot of the same vibes I was experiencing from The Winter King. Like I said, it's probably one of my, one of, if not my favorite part in the book. I really enjoyed traveling on the long road with Merlin and Nimue as they were searching for the cauldron, and I really enjoyed the concept of Merlin kind of getting weaker as they were searching for it. That was really cool in my opinion. Really enjoyed the encounter with that Irish warlord in that area. Cornwell did a very good job of making him seem super scary, in my opinion. He was very intimidating, and I want to see more of him in the future. Hopefully, we do. Um, I did, and I'm gonna jump all over the place here a little bit, but still in part 1, I did think the whole bone thing with Kywin and Dervel was a bit weird. Kind of wish they did it before the whole wedding ceremony, but I understand why they didn't, and I really think it was mostly because Cornwell wanted to draw more parallels between Arthur and Dervel, so that there's more comparisons between them there. Because really they're pretty similar than either of them are willing to acknowledge. They're way more similar than they're willing to acknowledge. Finding the cauldron was cool. Still don't really understand how they did it, but the whole, I think it was something with that dream state sequence with Kywin, probably one of the more convincing arguments in the story so far that magic could be real, as well as the fog that Merlin kind of calls in, I assume, there to help them in their escape. And it's really the last time there that Merlin uses one of his get out of jail free cards, at least so far. Part 2 is called The Broken War, and it's here where the story really kind of started to bother me a little bit more. They do get the cauldron back, they get it back to their homeland, and of course, Merlin says it's not the time to use it, so he kind of just stashes it down into his tower. So in the meantime, what's Dervel do? He goes back and rejoins with Arthur, and they go off to fight Ayla. Um, and I will say it's after that first fight against him, where one of my favorite moments happened. Did say there were 2 separate tragic moments that were my favorites. This was one of them, and it was the death of Kavan. I think that's how you say it. Um, I knew it was coming, but it really just still hit me right where it was supposed to. Again, it just shows how great of a writer Cornwell is. So after they defeat Ayla and the other Saxon army rolls up with dumbass Lancelot, that's where things really start to take a turn there. Um, he says he made peace, but he's just scheming with the Saxons the entire time. And by the way, from the moment he was baptized by Sansom and Guinevere was in attendance, and everyone just kind of shrugged their shoulders and was like, "Oh, that's weird, but whatever," and just moved on. What was that about? I thought that was kind of dumb. And the whole keeping the peace thing with Arthur here, I thought was just silly. Like, dude, the peace didn't come from your lips. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you could wipe out all the problems right here, right now, and just say screw it. I didn't make the peace myself. I didn't tell this guy he could even speak for me, and then just kill them all. Maybe I'm just evil, but hey, what the hell? No, Arthur's sense of loyalty is just too convenient at times, while at other times it just doesn't matter. Because again, in the first book, where all the answers could have been solved, he purposely broke an oath here, went off to marry Guinevere, and started an entire war. So, like I said, just some of the decision making by Arthur here, he's just a total doofus. And at times, it just, I think it's just blatantly there to keep progressing the plot. You know what I mean? Um, Again, it's not dumb to serve, and it's not dumb to keep an oath. But when this guy has already conveniently broken other oaths, it just kind of makes me scratch my head. More times than not, it's all of Arthur's doofus decision making that keeps leading to the problems in this story 9 times out of 10. Part 3 is called Camelot here, and it is mostly about the peace that is brought forward after Part 2, and it lasts for several years. and it is mostly about kind of the laws and culture and whatnot that is set up in the years after the war against the Saxons. And it's this time where we kind of learn about Mordred, and that's another one of Arthur's just stupid decisions here. Everyone with eyes, ears, and a lick of sense can kind of see that Mordred should not be king, is not fit to be king, but oathbound Arthur has to see it through. Um, and obviously, when he becomes king, everything starts to go belly up. And I can't remember if it is in part 3 or part 4, but whenever Sansom convinces Mordred to send Arthur and Dervell away, and like then they're attacked by the mob of Christians. It's so painfully obvious that they're all scheming together, or at least they're using Mordred to scheme. And then after they're attacked, and they find out that the mob of Christians knew that they were coming, and nothing kind of clicks in their brain right away. Make it make sense. The chaos that follows that attack definitely has some ups and downs for me. Of course, it's all very beautifully written, and when Dervell and his men kind of go back to try and save his family, that is the second of the two tragic moments that are my favorite in the story. The death of his youngest daughter, just so well written, and it was so just sad and heart wrenching there. Really well done. Um, and also, right before that, I'll take a step back. When Dervell went to kind of meet his mom, that was kind of weird but cool at the same time. Whatever Cursed Hannibers did on her was really gnarly indeed. But really, that was mostly just so we could find out that Dervell is Ayla's son. And I'll admit, that is the one thing I did not see coming in this book. I thought some things were kind of obvious, um, like the whole Lancelot Guinevere thing, but I'll get to that in a second. But this is the one thing I'll admit I did not see coming, so that was really well done. When everyone thinks that Mordred is dead and Lancelot's kind of trying to become the king, and Arthur's finally realizing how big of a dummy he is, and it's there where he kind of admits he doesn't want to be king and never did, never will want to. And that's another thing that I think is just, really rich because he just wants to be a farmer and wants to retire. But here he is over here kind of the whole time forcing Dervell to kind of do these impossible missions and tasks all the time because he's his man. A little bit of a hypocrite there, don't you think? But also, the final sequence where they go and try to save Guinevere, I thought that was really well done indeed. Arthur finally kind of sees Guinevere for what she is and all the things that she's been doing for years. But I mean, to me, it was kind of obvious that she was cheating since book 1, bro. I mean, come on. I don't know if that was supposed to be a reveal for the reader, but again, I thought it was sort of obvious that she was going to be doing something weird for the sake of her goddess. All right, so Bloodthirsty is out and about now, and that was really cool to end the book there, and I'm excited to see how that goes in the third book and how that eventually ruins the kingdom because we all know this really doesn't have a happy ending here because of the frame narrative. Um, and Lancelot getting off easy at the end pissed me off at first, but then I kind of understood it because I'm sure he's gonna pop up again in the third book for some more scheming. And finally, at the end, Arthur kind of says, "Mordred, you have all the kind of privileges of a king, but none of the authority or power, all decision-making privileges." And Arthur finally becomes the warlord of Britain, at least by title. Finally, he kind of says, "All right, I'll take the reins here." Um, so yeah, again, I'm the only person I have seen that kind of had these feelings about the story. I do still think it is really well written. Like I said, everybody should read it, but again, maybe I just went in with too high of expectations, like I said. And again, I am going to take a little bit of a break before hopping into Excalibur. So, hey, please let me know what you thought about Enemy of God and the Warlord Chronicles in general. Please, no spoilers, as always, in the comments. If you like this video, please drop a like and just subscribe if you want to keep seeing my reading journey. And I will see you guys in the next video. Later.